Howdy folks, my name's Christian and welcome to Bullish on Farming. Today is September 1st and woo, did it feel like a brisk fall morning. Whipped out the vest, haven't had that thing out since late winter, probably March. Anyways, why are we rolling out bales today? Well, we concluded our second lap of the farm, and a few days ago it was, and I brought him to this high field, which is our starting point, where we set out from the farm. We calve in this field, and then we turn out to pasture with the spring flush. And the last two fields that we had to graze yet on the farm of our second lap, I looked at those fields and there was feed there, don't get me wrong. There was about 6 inches of feed, and in some areas, 8 to 10 inches, but those fields, and one of them in particular, were pretty weak. We got a lot of carbon cover by trampling those fields, and they're on the other side of the farm, but I made the call and said these fields need another 60 days rest yet. And so we're gonna be bale grazing out here for a week and a half. And the way it turned out this year, we got way too much hay. And I mean, it's gonna go to use, but we yielded so much hay this year. It's almost like 2 years worth of hay because of a new arrangement we had leasing the land for hay. Opened up our farm. Well, I think it's opened up our farm with a lot of grazing potential. Because we could start using hay fields in our pasture rotations at the right times of the year to increase our grazing season and rest recovery on our fields. And I mean, this is what I'm talking about. Just north here, or south rather, that's a hay field. It was cut in late June and has grown out since then. And there is plenty of great feed in there for the cattle, but it's not fenced off for grazing. And we talked about incorporating hay fields, and we have selected 2 hay fields that we did incorporate this year. But with where this field is right now, I could just cut a gate in the wire that's separating us from that and then mob graze that. And I'll have to put up some perimeter fencing, of course, but that's no big deal. We work with Kiwi Tech posts and keep it simple with either a tree or a T-post as a corner. Brace it properly, use tensile, and fire it up. And once you got a hot perimeter and your cattle are already trained to wire, you'll have no problem mob grazing your hay fields. And if it's during the dry season in the middle of summer and you're mob grazing and you're leaving 6 to 8 inches after the cattle leave, you are mitigating any undesired impact that you would be worried about on your hay fields. And you have now just got a new field for feed for your cattle, plus you're fertilizing it. And I mean, people know this, but they're just nervous to put their cattle on the hay field. It's all about management. Management. You don't get your cattle to graze conventionally the grass right down on those hay fields. No way. You don't want to do that on any field. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but you're just not helping your plants out and really recovering. You're not putting them in the best position to recover, I mean. But hey, you got to work with what you got, and we're bale grazing for the next week and a half. That's not a negative. We're laying carbon down. This is kind of our sacrifice field. Like I said, we calve in it during calving season. May 1st, or even earlier, the cattle are out here as soon as we can get running water and don't have to worry about it freezing. The cattle are out here on grass, and we start a bale grazing program as soon as they're out here. And as you can see, right now, the way I'm doing it, I'm just kind of grabbing bales from anywhere on the back of the field where I have those bales lined. And the reason why the cows can't get to those bales is because I got a poly wire running in front of it, and it's hot. But I'm just pretty much targeting areas. I strap the bale to the back of my quad and I bang a rebar through it, the 8-foot rebar, and use a can't think, a post pounder to do that. So that's the rebar I got on my quad, the post pounder out there, right through the center of the bale, and then I use toe strap to anchor each side of the bale, and I pull it, and you keep that speed just right to keep the bale rolling and unrolling like a carpet. And it takes a little finessing and getting used to, but it's pretty fun. And when you get it down pat, it actually works pretty well. Take a look at some of our calves here. We got a calf mob going on here, and our calves are looking good. Look at the belly on that calf there. Yeah, you're all right too, but I'm talking this calf. Yeah. Running Angus out here, folks, for those who haven't seen previous videos. And, you know, we mob graze all throughout the season, moving cows on daily moves, moving to fresh grass every day with paddock, mob grazing, rotational grazing, whatever you want to call it, systems. But for the next week and a half, I'm just rolling bales out onto this field. Folks, look at all those manure pads. We are absolutely distributing manure, other cattle droppings, and bale residue to integrate carbon into that nitrogen so that we can start compounding carbon onto our soil and building topsoil, but also enriching that soil so that it is getting more fertile. Fertility. That's what I'm talking, baby. And all these pies here, you see all these cow pies? That's a certain amount of dollars that would have been spent on other fertilizers if you're trying to do this synthetically. But the cattle do it for you. Ruminant animals do it for you. Actually, all the animals you would raise on a farm will do it for you. It's all just about how they're managed so that their waste or droppings is distributed in an ecologically mindful way that actually contributes to the benefit of the land and the animals. And would I rather have pasture right now that I'd be mob grazing? 100%. But we don't. So this is the call we're making, and it's actually going to pay off for our third lap, because that's going to push us to 70 days recovery, and then we got about 60 days of grazing, 60 to 70 days of grazing, which will be in about, I don't know, let's just say it's a week and a half, and we're out just before mid-September. We'll go to October, mid-November, it could bring us right till December. By holding up these 2 weeks, and I didn't preface it before, but we got no rain for 60 days. And then starting a week ago, we've had pretty steady rain. So for this next week and a half, I'm looking for our pastures to use that rain and boost our pastures for that last lap. And then we'll graze it the best we can. And if we can get close to December grazing our group, that's a win. Okay? Yeah, well, things start getting wet, no problem, keep the cattle moving. Of course, you're gonna have to evaluate daily when you're in conditions that are a little bit more prone to the cattle's impact on the land. But you don't have to take your cattle completely off the land because you're nervous how to manage them. Plus, you got to evaluate the fields before the cattle are even on it. Can your land handle it? Do you have enough vegetation above ground that's either been trampled or standing yet that can serve as an armor to your soil. And for those of you who've heard that before, I call it a carbon layer, but it's also like a shield of armor that protects the dirt from harsh exposure to the elements, as well as the direct cattle's impact. If there's about, I don't know, 3 to 4 inches of carbon between the cow's hoof and the soil, that is going to mitigate the cattle's impact significantly. And what would just be a blunt punch into bare, wet soil by a hoof before is now really just braced and shielding the dirt. So is it perfect? Well, in nature's design, yes. Is it kind of exactly how you would like things to be? Not all the time. The cattle are going to have some areas where they do beat up, but that's the you're willing to endure that to keep the animals on the land and keep the animals moving in a way they would be in their natural element. So that's what it's all about, folks. Take a look at this steer right here. This would have been last year's calf. That's a good looking steer. That's a beefy steer, boy. Yep. Got out a little later with the bales. I wanted the girls to clean up the residue from yesterday, so I left them with a little bit less than they probably could have had. That's fine. Every now and then when you're rolling bales out like this, if the cattle start to get picky because they're just looking for the next bale, you go a little hard on them, I don't know, once a week. And, I usually bring 2 bales out a day. Yesterday I just brought out 1. And then after that first bale, they'll start going to the older residues that have been rolled out. And that's how you get them to clean up, so you don't have too thick of carbon pats on your land. Check this out. All the cattle mobbing, single file line pretty much. And it goes all the way across the field. Folks, you couldn't get the cattle to do this if you tried, unless you had a bale of hay rolled out. How are cattle gonna mob like this in this uniform fashion otherwise? And that's how you can target areas and strips of your farm. So, pretty close to wrapping this one up, folks. Just gonna take a quick trip back to the group here, and we'll probably sign off. Things are warming up today, starting with the cooler mornings now. We're still getting to mid-20s Celsius, that is. And hoping that can hang in for a bit longer so that we can boost our pastures for our last pass. But all in all, we're happy with how things are going. And at the end of the day, we can't complain. So folks, just want to say thanks for stopping by. We'll see you on the next one.